Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time and having the interest um, to view our presentation on these three projects. I'm Ben Waechter, and I'm here with Alexis Coyer. Um, we're both from Waechter Architecture, obviously, and we have three projects. It's three projects that won awards last year, which is part of the series, which maybe you've gone to other presentations. Two of them are houses, and one is a tasting room for a winery in Amity in the Willamette Valley. The first one I'll talk about is the Meadow House. That's in Eugene, Oregon. And then I'll talk about the Dune House on the Oregon coast. And then Alexis will talk about Corollary wines. So jumping in, I guess starting with this, and we thought just to make it a little more fun, we would start with a diagram from each, and in the diagram for us is important because that's, I would say, most often, if not always, a way we start. So, after all the information gathering on a project, we really try to synthesize that into um, the simplest organizational strategy we can, that that solves the challenges and amplifies the opportunities of a project. So for this, what we're calling the Meadow House, this one's in Eugene. We have this diagram, and essentially the Meadow House, it's a very normal house in some ways. It's three bedrooms, 2.5 bath, 2,300 square feet. So it's very normal. But the unusual thing is that it's on the edge. It's adjacent to the Madison Meadow, and I don't if anybody's from Eugene. Um, it's in um, Southeast Eugene, and um, you can see downtown in the distance, and then University of Oregon's. Oh, maybe I even see a big O in the distance. I didn't know that showed up, but it's not far from the U of O. But the Madison Meadow that you see in the foreground it's it's um it's um, uh, publicly owned, or it's a publicly owned open space, and there was the property owner who originally privately owned the property. I don't know, um, 20 years ago or something like that, did keep one lot, and it's a corner lot that's 100 by 100, and that's what the Meadow House is built on. So there was this one sort of privately owned lot. There was nothing on it that wasn't part of this Madison Meadow that's collectively um, sort of operated and maintained. So it's a very unusual spot, and we wanted to do a house that sort of connected with the meadow, but then also, um, it could be private. And so we came up with this organizational strategy um, of essentially a courtyard house. And so the diagram, and Alexis, you don't have to go back to the diagram, but thinking back to the diagram, where we kind of capture a bit of the meadow and bring it into the house. So the Meadow House does have views. It has sort of protected frame views out to the meadow, but most of the views are towards this sort of central courtyard. So it's really a courtyard house. It kind of snatches part of the meadow and brings it in to create this kind of meadow within a meadow, or this private meadow, kind of miniature meadow in the house. And um, the house is organized. It's a sort of a bit of a pinwheel organization, with solids and voids that go around the meadow, this sort of our kind of made meadow that's in the center. So the dash line is the roof overhang, and then you can see basically these solid parts of the plan, and the the you enter in. Nothing's labeled here, so I'll describe it to you. But the um, sort of upper right quadrant, that's the entry. So it's entry, um, coat room, med room, powder room, that type of thing. And then from there, you enter into what's basically a glazed room, and that's the living room. And then off of that that glass room or that glazed room, the living dining is the kitchen. So the kitchen is part of the in the poche or the solid part. And then from there you move to kind of these secondary bedrooms, the more kind of closed, darker part, and then you open it up again to what we're calling a family room, but kind of a secondary living space. And then finally, as you move to the left lower part, that's the primary bedroom. So primary bedroom, primary bathroom, um, closet, that type of thing. And then the freestanding in the upper left is the detached garage. So it's detached in plan, but of course, as you saw from the aerial, there's a roof that connects everything. So there's a lot of where there's, the entry breezeway, and then there's this covered outdoor space. So that's the plan. This is what it looks like from the street. So you see that first breezeway, you see that detached garage to the right, well detached in plan, but connected by the roof. And then you see the courtyard in the middle. And then it's all clad with bonderized metal. So it's a standing seam bonderized, um, kind of somewhat living or patinaing metal. This is the entry and then the courtyard. And the courtyard, so as you can see, the roof, so it's tall from the outside, and then the scale is much smaller, more intimate in the courtyard because of the roof height. And it pitches to the inside. There's no gutters, so the rain or snow in some cases um, falls off or comes off the roof and then pours into this rain garden that's in the center. And I think, these photos were taken right after construction or not super long after it. And I was just down there a couple of weeks ago or last week, and it's really filled in. So it's kind of fun, like these projects. Um, I think we decided we want to become landscape architects because all of it's all, it's our projects that lean into landscape. They're very fun, and they just seem to get better year after year. So we're definitely going in that direction when we can. But that's the courtyard. Another view showing the covered outdoor space. And then it's a little hard to see, but you can imagine there's these frame views out to the meadow, but it's a bit buffered from the public meadow part. Next. And then living room. So you can see the living room, it's all glazed on the courtyard side. On the courtyard side, it has higher windows to let light in from the kind of, well, there's an alley on that side, but the public side, so letting light in, but privacy. And then you see how the ceiling, higher ceiling on these open parts, and then as you move into if you remember the plan, the more solid parts, it's lower ceilings. That's where we're running mechanical. Kitchen view. Um, so oak cabinets, oak floor, pretty simple material palette. And then, yeah, this is the frame to view towards the meadow so that you can see the public meadow beyond. That's it.
Nope.
And well, that's it for Eugene. So, and
Ben, do you want to wait at the very end for questions from all of them, or do we want to take
I don't
questions
know.
on the individual
I
projects?
kind of blew through that, so I think we're doing good on time. If anybody, let's wait till the end.
Okay.
We'll have plenty of time for questions. And hopefully people do have questions. So yeah, I'll go next. Yeah, to the Dune House. So um, the Dune House is a little I mean, it's different. So I mean, the context is different, obviously. It's on the beach. It's in Manzanita. Um, it's also a vacation house, sort of house. It's or a second house, at least, and it's smaller. Um, and really, the organizational strategy with the Dune House is that it fronts the dunes, so it has these really kind of world-class views of the Pacific Ocean and the dunes, in front of, between the house and that. But it so that's really the sort of opportunity. that kind of big view. It also has a really beautiful kind of front yard view with um, it's sort of a tighter kind of shorter but beautifully planted view. And then but the challenge is the sides. So the sides, are, yeah, we don't know if we should if show the photo or the diagram, but
Yeah.
basically the diagram. I mean, they kind of go together. You can see the site photo. So, on the left is Pacific Ocean, these beautiful grass dunes, and then but these houses, one-story houses are really, I mean, jammed in there is the wrong word, but they're really stacked in there. And so there's not much privacy from side to side. So so the trick or the kind of challenge and opportunity thing was, how to screen the sides, but not making it feel like it's hemmed in, but also screening it for privacy, but then opening up the view. And so we came up with this diagram to, yes, we want this house to be hunkered down and really feel like I don't know, like a cocoon in a sense, like a wooden, like a really protected vessel in a way and kind of tucked into the dunes, but then be able to open up with these really dramatic views. So anyway, that's the diagram. This is the area plan or neighborhood plan. So showing how these houses that are along, um, along the the dunes or the beach are kind of lined up and really tightly spaced together. Um, and then next. The plan. So interestingly, I mean, we don't do all our plans like this, although I guess you wouldn't know otherwise. But this is another sort of pinwheeling type plan, but but the central area instead of a courtyard, it's the pri it's basically it's a vaulted space. So around the perimeter, um, again we have the really playing or not playing, but um, designing with or shaping this kind of experience of the space with solid spaces and open spaces and so the perimeter, the open spaces on the perimeter would be the kitchen and the seating. So the kitchen is on the upper, not the upper right, but to the right where you see the kind of stove symbol there. That's the kitchen. It has a flat ceiling, and then opposite that, to the left but a little lower, that's a seating area with a big kind of wall-to-wall, floor-to-ceiling window that faces the dunes, and then in the middle, this sort of gathering hub of a room. It's vaulted, and that's the dining room. So there's a custom dining room table. Um, and that's the hub. It's vaulted and then it vaults up into you can kind of see it dashed there, and we'll show photographs later, but it's a dashed square in the upper right corner. That's basically like a kind of a light wind chimney. It's sort of in the shape of a chimney, but it opens to the leeward side. The window does. So it sort of relies on when it's open, it creates a negative pressure and creates a kind of suction to passively ventilate and cool the house. There's no air conditioning. I mean, it's on the beach, but there's no air conditioning. So it uses, passive cooling, but through a stack effect or, more than stack. It's really like this negative pressure chimney thing. And then we're also bringing natural light through that. But that's the hub. So the dining room, the hub, and then these things radiate off of it. Solid rooms, the bedrooms. So there's two bedrooms. There's a primary one that faces the beach, upper left, and then secondary bedroom on the lower right that faces the front yard, which is, yeah, the front yard basically. And then support spaces on the lower left and upper right. That's the plan. So pictures, this is what it looks like from the beach. So again, well, you see the chimney, and the window, sort of the operable windows on the opposite side. So, typically, the wind's coming off Pacific Ocean and, hitting this side of the building and create a negative pressure on the opposite side. So that's that suction effect. And then you can see the big window from the seating um, room. So these are Raynar's windows, if people are familiar with those, stainless steel frames, but they're concealed with the siding. I think we might have a detail photo later, but stainless steel. Big pieces of glass, or this glass is a big piece. And then, wall to wall, floor to ceiling for the living room. And then the bedroom, the primary bedroom on the left is a horizontal. So it's in that, it's the more intimate space, it's the closed space, it's the poche of the plan. And it has this framed horizontal view of the landscape. Um, I guess I'm also forgetting to mention, I did in the past in the Eugene house, but um, but collaborators. Um, so Grummel Engineering was the structural engineer for both of them, and they did a great job. Both houses. Um, this house was built, the Dune House was built by Green Gables, and they did an excellent job. Very good craftspeople. Interestingly, and not to kind of bounce around, but the Eugene house was done by he just retired, which is this is kind of a fun fact. He retired, but I think the Meadow House was his last house, and it was the first in his long career, the first time he had worked with an architect. So previously I mean, he was doing these infill houses and remodels and that type of thing, but never with an architect. And so it was kind of a fun it, it was a fun thing to kind of do with him, and it was a new experience for him, and I think he enjoyed it.
And then retired.
Um, and then retired, not because of us, just coincidentally. Yeah. So okay, and it's all clad, so it's clad with cedar shingles, which is obviously very typical of the area, on the roof and the siding. And we wrapped it in. So I guess it does have, there are these common threads that I wasn't thinking of, but I guess it's a technique we typically or oftentimes will use, is using a single material on the outside and really leaning into the sculptural character of it. So with the Meadow House, it was the bonderized metal, but using that for the walls and roof and soffits, and similarly here, different material, but the same idea, using the cedar shingle for the walls, roof and soffit. Not the shingles for the soffit, but cedar, like a TNG cedar ceiling. And then you can see the stainless, they're really beautiful doors and windows, but you can see the Raynar's um, window, window and door. Pretty awesome system. And then here you see that main hub room, the dining room with the um, custom table. You see the kitchen behind, um, um, and Chamberlain Chamberlain uh, woodworking cabinets. He he did the table and the cabinets, and I think he did the interior doors as well, along with Green Gables. Um, Doug, yeah, Doug Chamberlain. So he did all of this. He's an awesome cabinet maker, just to plug him. Um, and then yeah, and then similar to the seating room, or the kind of the seating room, the kitchen also has this wall to wall ceiling. Instead of ceiling to floor, it's ceiling to countertop windows. So really leaning into kind of bringing this immersive connection to the outdoors. So we recessed the window system into the ceiling and the walls and countertop. Um, we have retractable. There's
Sorry.
in both cases. We're a well-oiled machine over here.
I'll go
Um,
back here.
no, Anyway, in all the windows there's retractable roller shades for for light control. And then we saw the bedroom from the outside. Now you can see it from the inside. So this framed kind of horizontal landscape view, which is pretty cool. And the bedroom, probably nobody caught it in the plan, but it's a little like the foot of the bed is pushed up against the wall, and then the headboard is it's a piece of casework or finish, like a cabinet. That's the closet. So it's a little bedroom's a little unusual. You walk behind the cabinet and then approach the bed from either side, and then you have this pretty awesome view of the dunes. And and then oh well, there you go. This is the view to the left. That's a view of the headboard piece. So if you can imagine, this is kind of the closet. There's no walk-in closet, so this is the closet. Um, to the left, and but it's also serves as the headboard to the um to the bed. So you can imagine where you see the light coming to the left there. You walk around the corner to the left, and that's entering one side of the bed, and where we're viewing from, you would enter the other side of the bed. And then on the right is the one of the bathrooms. So this is off. Well, this one is the primary bathroom. So off of this bedroom area, it's just, a fully tiled bathroom. And next, and then this is a view of that seating area. So big window, that Raynar's window, um, looking at the dune. It's pretty awesome. It's a very nice space. And oh, well, the paneling I should mention, so it's all white oak. So wall paneling, ceiling paneling, that's the same material. And then the floor is a different product, um, but white oak to match. And it uses a radiant heating system, so hydronic radiant heating system. So it's a slab on grade, um, and then the heating system, and then we have this kind of floating wood floor. Next. And then another view looking up the coast. So this kind of shows, well, there were a couple of photos that sort of show this idea of trying to kind of not fool people, but kind of when you're in the house, have the impression of being able to open up in all directions, but then simultaneously kind of blocking key privacy views on, the side. So, I mean, this is in the main room looking out. Um, on the sides, we have these loggias. So there's an entry loggia and a side entry, and we kind of use the loggias. Maybe Alexis, you could quickly go back to one of those loggia pictures. Yeah, maybe this is the closest one. But anyway, that was one of the techniques. I mean, there's smaller openings in general, but then also having the loggia and having depth and using that as a way to kind of buffer and screen from kind of adjacent neighbor properties, houses. Nice. And then a exterior detail is showing, I don't know, how we wrapped um, the shingles into the window system. So it's really kind of reducing the exterior material palette, just down to really the like leaning into the character and identity and the feeling of the weathered cedar shingle, and then just glass, and then with some accents of stainless steel, and then an overview showing the entry loggia. This is the opposite side from that last loggia picture. This is the entry side. Um, and then showing how the roof works. There's no eave, so the water just runs off the roof, no gutters, off the roof down the siding. It's a rain screen system with a liquid applied membrane for the for the weather barrier, moisture barrier. And then, oh, here you can see that that leeward side window, and that's motorized, so it's pretty high up. So to make it easy to use and functional, or just well, easy to use, it's motorized. So on good days when you want to get that ventilation, that thing, it's an awning window that motors open. And that might be, nope, one more. Evening. You can view in with the night, with the dusk shot, late dusk, and see. This probably gives you a better sense of how that bedroom area works. You can see that headboard with kind of a night stand table behind, um, reading light, how the bed works, and then that seating area. And then you can see the kitchen beyond. We see the dining room table and then the kitchen beyond. So that window beyond is the kitchen window. So pretty compact. It's a really, there's no sheetrock in it. So it's like a little jewelry box of like, so higher price, like higher square foot price than Meadow House is it's a really nice house, but more modest budget. And this one's higher budget, no sheetrock, um, you know, um, really good quality window system, that type of thing. All right. Lexus Squire's up.
All right, last but not least, so a little bit of a shift. We've been looking at single family residences. This is a tasting room, as Ben mentioned, Willamette Valley in Amity. It's about the same scale as the houses that we just discussed, but obviously different program. So essentially, we'll start with the site plan for this as the diagram because it really is about the entire complex of the architecture to the working vineyard to the topography of the immediate area, but also the Van Duzer corridor, which is kind of the plan is north-south, so it'd be like page lower left, so the other side of the hill. So here you can kind of see on the right, we have a photograph of the gate, which is designated by the red dot on the plan. And then we have the tasting room, which you can't see in the photograph, but you can see it um, as the rectangle on the plan. And this is really setting up the idea of the project as being a beacon. So something you see from a distance that announces itself. Um, and not only is it a wayfinding device when you're on the vineyard, but it really acts as a signage for the building in many ways. You can see it from that corridor I mentioned, the kind of valley on the other side. It's bright and the bold, and there's no need to have additional signage on the building. The building itself um, acts as a sign. Um, so here you can see it up on the knoll, nestled in amongst these like pretty funky looking white oak. So previously the site, this is urban forestry or agricultural forest land, um, all in all over 40 acres. Previously it was unused, but there was a bunch of Doug fir growing on the property. The previous owner had that Doug fir forested, but they left behind these stands of white oak that were really pressed for sun. So that's why they have this kind of like wonky look. And the owners, Gene Feldkamp and Dan Deephouse, really wanted to kind of keep this and kind of re allow the oak savanna, this kind of natural habitat, to emerge after the foresting. So part of the siting of the building, it wanted to be up on this knoll, which couldn't really be used for uh, the plants, the grape vines themselves. So kind of keeping the trees, setting the building as a beacon on the site, a beacon to the valley, but also once you arrive at this beacon, and we'll go into how the building itself is arranged, really offering these views backed out. So beacon and prospect. is kind of how we thought about the final siting of this building. So here you are up in one of these called an outdoor tasting room, looking back at the direction from whence you came, and also looking out over the Corollary vineyard. So quickly looking at the massing of the building, um, like the previous two projects, we kind of look at the building as like a clearly defined or very legible kind of character almost, where you can kind of get a sense at it at a first glance. This one is kind of described by a very playful roof form, which actually uh, relates to both the program and this idea of building as a sign. So functionally, harvesting rainwater for use in the vineyard was really important to Jean and Dan, to the clients. They wanted a very like environmentally friendly operation. And so this kind of verse or diagonal butterfly roof harvests rainwater down into a catchment basement basin, which then feeds into this natural pond that they're currently working on damming up that's nestled in the lower point of the property. The second opportunity that this roof form offers is you can kind of see in the circle window, which is the kind of front elevation that you approach from the parking area that we'll show photos of in a few minutes. Um, is that their logo corollary, it's drawn from mathematical argument, has these triangles in it. So the building is also kind of speaking the same language as the logo. So once again, it's continuing to act as sign, which really meant we didn't have to paste signage all over the building. The building itself spoke for that. Here we can see a plan, a little bit different from the previous two projects organizationally, in as much as there's not a kind of central void in the case of both the Meadow and Dune House that's organizing it, but it's really um, a kind of idea of a kind of checkerboarding of spaces or uh, inter the intervening of open or exterior spaces to interior spaces. Uh, this one's also a little bit more directional. So page left, you can see this kind of pushed in or angled in area. That's the entrance that kind of draws people in. So it's a little bit more directional in that way. But once you're drawn in through that void in the mass, you arrive at this open seating area that, if you recall that first image of, and then in the center we have the tasting room itself, and then flanking on either end in these solid or poche pieces on the left, we have a kitchen which includes wine storage. It's not a they don't do cooking on site, so it's mostly refrigeration, maybe some light prep. And all the way to the right, we have a kind of secondary tasting room, but it's really used as storage and more of an office right now. So they do very limited tasting. So this is really uh, a quite small scale, intimate tasting experience. So from the front, you can see this is after you drive up and park at the top of the hill. You see this angled in portion that kind of invites you into the mass of the building, and you can see the outdoor chair right through that portal. Once you're inside, so the portal that we just walked through is on the left. So now we're looking through the building towards that Van Duzer corridor I mentioned, towards the larger valley. And to our back is the Corollary Vineyard. A few things to call attention to. This is at the top of a hill, and especially in the winter or shoulder seasons, it gets incredibly windy up there. And part of the tasting experience is these outdoor spaces. So you'll see in the foreground and the background these metal curtains that we sourced from banker wire. And these essentially, we looked at a lot of samples with the clients, and this is the a kind of balance of opacity and transparency to see through, but also to block an amount of wind, an amount of rain, and also to soften the sun in the summer heat. One thing that was really important for this project is that the clients um, and ourselves as well didn't want a kind of typical vinyl, like roll down system like you usually see. They really wanted something special, and this almost acts like a jewelry on the building with the way it captures the light. Something else you'll see in this image is these in-ceiling heating panels. So it's in between the cylinder lights. That's bromic heating. And they're kind of arranged once again over the seating areas to really allow the space to be fully used 3.5 seasons of the year. And then to the right on the image, we see the tasting room that's defined by you Sierra Pacific in this project. So there's a wide bifold door to one side and tall, generous windows opposite. So now we're inside that tasting room. I should mention the interiors of this project were done by the client largely. Jean Feldkamp, she has her own interior design practice called Modern Heirloom. So she worked with Xena Forest Products on sourcing white oak, sustainable forested white oak that you see on the ceiling and the walls. It's really an homage to the spindly white oak trees I mentioned earlier. Like the other two projects, it's a slab on grade. No radiant here. It's hard to see, but there's a linear um, HVAC grill in the ceiling at the far end of the photo. And then you can see the fun play of character or colors, excuse me, that Jean really had. So um, the pink room, which is the entry vestibule to the main tasting room, and there's a bathroom off of that. And of course, to the right, we see the exterior tasting area with the view overlooking the vineyard. And this is looking into the tasting room, and once again, the kind of framed view looking further out towards the valley. And there's that view through. So the site you can see falls off extremely quickly. So that also kind of heightens the excitement of being in this volume perched at the top of the hill. And there it is situated amongst the trees. The siding in this case is a box rib. The color is custom. It is both an homage to kind of typical agricultural projects that you'll see around the kind of like red barn look, and it also is the same color as the Corollary label, the Corollary red. Once again, building as signage, but also building as beacon. So we have from Taylor Metals standing seam roof, or sorry, excuse me. Yes, we have a standing seam roof. And then what you can't see, and I don't believe we have a picture of, is part of the harvesting of the roof is in the valley, there's actually in the solid leg that you see at the front of the building here, if you remember when you're walking through that entryway, there was a kind of solid leg to one side. There's actually a sump drain on the roof that then funnels down that rainwater. So that leg not only acts as a kind of like moment of entering the building and forming that spatial experience, but also functionally carries the water from the roof down into the ground, into that catchment system. And it also houses that metal screen we looked at. There's a pocket for it to hide into when it's not in use. Thank you. I also kind of whipped through, but we would love to take questions because really there's a lot of different angles to these projects, and different things that we could definitely speak to for each of them. So if anyone has questions, we would love to field them.
There are a couple questions in the chat. The very first one was on the Eugene Meadow House, and it was who was the
Whoa.
landscape architect?
Um, oh, the landscape architect was well, it's it's a landscape architect who's from Eugene originally. Um, Kitty. Um, let me. I'm I'm gonna pull up Kitty's name here, last name. Um, but that's who it was.
It is kind of interesting looking at this that none of these projects have gutters. I just realized that. Or different ways of dealing with rainwater.
There's a couple questions about Dune House, but we just got another one on the Meadow House. Do you guys want to go back and
Yeah.
forth, or
Well, it doesn't matter. But yeah, what's the one on the Meadow House?
how is the bonderized siding holding up on the Meadow House?
Good. Yeah, it's well, I was a little worried because it's also well, I would worry in general, but this is so the woman you see there, that's my stepmother. So it's I have to be, she was it's pretty cool like this is not necessarily her aesthetic and um I mean she probably has a more traditional aesthetic, I would say. But it's pretty cool to, that she would let her kid, design her a
Mhm.
contemporary house like this. And so I would always be sensitive, but I'm extra sensitive that the materials last a long time. I mean, part of it is like making a low maintenance. I mean, she likes the garden, but it's not, I mean, it's awesome that she doesn't have to get up on a ladder or have somebody come clean the gutters. So that type of thing and not have to repaint that type of thing. And the bonderized, um, we did a winery in the Willamette Valley Furioso vineyards, and we used a bonderized metal for the roof, and that's been holding up really well. That's even more exposed. Um, but I've been, pleasantly surprised with this house that it's it's good. I mean, in fact, it looks better. Like when it went up, there was some panels were more streaky, or they just came out of the mill different. Um, can't really see it here necessarily. I mean, sort of over the garage, there's dark panels and lighter panels, and it's kind of evened out. So in some ways, like I mentioned, I was there a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week. Not only is the garden, I mean, the garden looks awesome, um, but the bonderized metal has kind of evened out and looks really good.
And the name of that landscape architecture, the firm is Land Current, all one word.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Well, there are a couple of questions about Dune House. David had a few. The first one was he was surprised that the Dune House didn't have a fireplace, and he was assuming the owner didn't want one.
Um, yeah, I don't know if I have a good, it was not the clients were not, that was not a priority for them or a wood stove or something like that. I don't have a good answer for you except that it wasn't something, it's not a situation where we talked them out of it. They just didn't want one.
There is a sauna.
Oh, there is a sauna. I
There is a
forgot
sauna.
to mention that.
Yeah.
It's a secret sauna that's not secret anymore. So everybody, so yeah, there's a sauna at the back. There's no cold plunge, but there's a sauna. I guess you can run to the beach.
And run back to the slide.
Yeah.
Um, the lot to the south vacant on the Dune House,
Yes.
since the one on the north
Yeah.
is
Yeah, it
vacant.
is. I mean, that's kind of fortunate, I guess.
Not
I mean,
necessarily gonna last.
we thought it's not going to last forever, so we designed it in a way. I mean, we thought about that with these loges on each side to kind of buffer it.
Go to
So
the overall photo there.
yeah, that's so that yeah, there we're standing. It's a little bit of a dune on the empty lot, so we're standing up on this hill. Um, but yeah, where we're standing could be a house.
Yeah,
Um,
and knowing them, you probably will be eventually, knowing the coast.
yeah,
Speaking of that, he also wanted to know if there were any window treatments or sun privacy screening on this house.
yeah. There's Mecco. It's a Mecco shade. Um, it's tucked up into the ceiling, but it's a pocketed roller shade. Yeah, there you go. You can see. So
Ah,
you see the frame of the window, and then that dark area is a roller shade. No blackout shades, but a um I don't remember the light transmittance, but yeah, some sort of um light shading.
the most recent comment was how many Dune book movie jokes were made during the design of this house.
I don't know
Yeah,
if any. We have a big Dune head in our office right now, but he wasn't in the firm at the time.
Uh,
He missed out.
yeah.
we got a compliment. Some is saying they love the clean building forms in these projects.
Thank you.
Sam says you mentioned diagramming as being an important early step in your process. Can you talk more about what you hope to capture in diagramming or otherwise at concept design? And what are you choosing to ignore at that point?
Okay, yeah. So um what we found, like for what works for us at least, is and we've over a lot of years, like we found that the projects that are most successful, and what I mean by most successful are the projects that that really resonate with people or feel the best to be in. They tend to have these themes, and one of the themes is a strong organizational um, um, strategy, basically. I mean, you could call it a party or a concept or something, but we like to call it an organizational strategy, but it's not, and it's an organizational strategy that's based in it's not so it's really not, it's leaning opposite to to what might be an esoteric kind of concept for a project. So it's very pragmatic, but it's also rooted in experience. So how do you experience something? So we, like every other architect, we do our information gathering, but to us, it's really important, once we do that, to come up with an organizational strategy, that can kind of solve all of the challenges of the project, but also kind of lean into and heighten the opportunities. And like I think to us, it's what's important about that. And again, it's like really experientially driven. It's about how you experience space um, and how you experience buildings and how you experience physical environments. So it's about space, but it's also about a character. So a strong um, like i identity. I don't even know how to describe it exactly, but a strong identity or character, or like giving it life, you can point. It has a personality. I mean, not a literal personality, but it has a character to it. And like to us, if like that's the kernel, that's the nugget. If it has a strong organizational strategy, I mean, yes, it has to solve programmatic issues and be, efficient and all of that, but it also has to, if it's singular, if you can kind of get at this, it's not always literally singular, but if you can get towards this singular organizational strategy, that's the kernel that starts to create a character for the building. So, this one's, the kernel. I mean, this one's easy. It's like a courtyard house. So that's the character of it. It's a courtyard house, and it's articulated in a particular way, but at its essence, it's a courtyard house. The Dune House, the organizational strategy there too. It's this cocoon, or it's this very protected, and you could think of that dining room as being kind of the essence of the house. Like, yes, there's more to the house than that dining room, but the dining room is really that's the essence. And then it's buffered, it's a cocoon, or it's protected by the kind of pinwheeling legs around it. But that room is sort of the heart. It's the nucleus. And so, that's all based on the organization. Um, and so using that organizational strategy to really as a starting point, or the kind of the kernel of creating a strong identity or character, that to us, that's like what creates like the buildings that I like, or that because we talk about in our office, the buildings that we like out in the world like have that quality. So we're always like searching for like what um gives buildings and play not just buildings, it can be natural places too, but what gives special places um a strong sense of identity, for lack of a better word.
Mhm.
That's a long-winded answer to the
That's
Well,
but it's
there's a
also but it's
there's more.
also yeah. Okay.
I was gonna say there's more. Somebody added on to that question, so you can keep talking about it. Is that part of the early design process collaborative at your firm or led by a project designer? And also wondering about the team sizes for these projects.
Do you want me to jump in
Yeah.
then?
Yeah, you take it.
Yeah, so we're actually, I mean, we're talking about this a lot at our firm because we are a very collaborative office. We're a small office. I think we're 10 right now. Um, of course, Ben is always involved early on, but it's not a top-down dictation, and it is this kind of like diagramming or finding a language of a building that allows us to design collaboratively. So we're always talking about distilling like how do we do architecture? What does it mean? How do we design? So a project comes in. The project teams can be small, can be like 1 to 2 people for a project like this. For example, I was the PA/PM on Corollary, but I usually had someone helping me in the office. And of course, once again, Ben is involved early on, but there's usually a primary sketch um, that once again Ben is involved in, but it's discussed as a team and then it's developed as a team. And we encourage everyone to speak up and discuss because that's what keeps the work fresh and that's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps it collaborative, which is one of the, I think, biggest strengths of how we design.
All right, in the next question, I don't know how to pronounce the first word. But it looks
O'Shea.
like Poche. Okay, Poche seems to be a common theme thread. Is there an organizational advantage to approaching the planning this way?
And you can,
Okay.
I'll go to the corollary plan.
Yeah. I mean, I think like a simple if I was to, and it's dangerous to do this, but if I was to to simplify our approach, it's really there's sort of three pillars that we feel like are important to creating a building that has this strong character that you know, we never quite get there, but we're always trying to move towards. Um, I mean, all the way, it's sort of impossible to get to completely get it, um, but we talked about the organizational structure. So that seems like for us, that's really fundamental, like coming up with this organizational strategy that's really rooted in experience and how the the kind of organization of it can create a character. So that's one. I think secondly, um, spatial order is like paramount. It's like really important. So that's like pillar number two, if you're going to think. So we have these like three pillars, but spatial order, and so Poche, and it's kind of like, I mean, we think of it sort of like Lewis Kahn's, servant served or main space, primary space, but we kind of think of it also as, instead of being servant spaces or serve spaces, we think of it as more, when we look at a program, and it's easy with a small project like this, but for a bigger project, what we'll do is um, we'll look at the program and we'll kind of think about, well, what part of the program, just from an experience point of view, wants to be open. Okay, it's really kind of dumbed down to that. Like what spaces want to be open in the program, and then what programmatic elements want to be closed. And the closed spaces could be what you would typically think of as like back of house or servant spaces, but they could also be really important spaces, but they're more intimate. They need to be closed, like a sauna, or I don't know, or a bathroom, or a meditation room, or it could be a really important room, but the spatial experience of it's it's confined. So we're really, in all the projects, we're trying to tease out what rooms want to be open, free flowing, and what rooms um, want to be closed. And so we use the poche, and poche meaning that it's a more dense. That's like the solid. So in Beaux-Arts architecture, that would be the mass or the stone, or the solid of the plan. And then other people, I mean, it's not just Louis Kahn. I mean, Peter Zumthor. I mean, there's lots of people use this technique. um, but anyway, for us, really teasing apart which spaces want to be open, which wants to be closed. And then I think, coming from the Northwest, it's like we're always building out of sticks, like 2x4s and 2x6s. And so that's like, to us, that's always been the trick. I mean, we're not always building with that, but oftentimes, whether it's wood studs or metal studs, we're building with these thin building materials. And so how can we build with that, but have this sort of more, how can we have a spatial experience as you move through the building that's more robust or elevated or like strong? And so we really think about, from an organizational point of, or from a spatial point of view, like how to create volumes. So thinking about plans as being either constructed out of volumes, or an opposite way of thinking about it, how to start with a solid and carve out. So either adding volumes, or carving away. But the important thing is, for us, has been being articulate about um, about kind of what spaces are solid and what are void. And again, the important thing about that is to really have like an impactful spatial experience. So, like people, you know, we're not building out of solid stone anymore, but having that experience that you might have through a medieval castle, walking through thresholds, or into sort of closed spaces and open spaces. So I don't know, that answer meandered a bit, but that's the second pillar, is really placing a lot of importance on um, spatial order, um, like feeling feeling what it's like to be inside a volume versus walking around a volume, and how they can work together collaboratively to kind of reinforce kind of a I don't know, like a, not a flat experience, but um like a rich experience as you're moving through a building. And then just to add, like, because I mentioned the three pillars, I think the third one um is really composition. So I don't know if anybody has a composition question, but like, to us, like, there's a lot of stuff that we think about, but if you were to boil it down, it could be this organizational strategy, having a strong organizational strategy, one. Number two, having a strong spatial order strategy. And then third, the compositional strategy. And what I mean by compositional is like plan section elevation. How can you boil it down? How can you create a plan where it's hard to imagine what you'd add to improve it and hard to imagine what you'd take away without, wrecking it. So really distilling it down. And, to us, it's not just an academic, it's not just an intellectual, it's not intellectual at all. Like, I mean, the purpose of it, it's really like we feel like if you can boil it down, the elevation or the plan, like those are the places that feel the best, so it's always about, we're always like circling. I mean, that's the purpose of creating these strategies for ourselves is we found that you know, those three things help us achieve places that feel the best to be in.
Well, thank you so much. We've hit at 6 o'clock, so I need to wrap things up. I did want to remind everybody that all three of these projects were award winners last year at the Oregon Architecture Awards, and this year's Oregon Architecture Awards are this Friday. Tickets are still available. Feel free to come. We would love to see you. Waechter may win another one. Who knows? And thank you both, Ben and Alexis, for showing us your projects. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And
Thank you, everyone.
thanks everybody for taking time to join.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.